Hello everyone. So today we are at the GAP HQ office and we are here with Professor Ranjith Dissanayake. So Professor Ranjith Dissanayake is the founder and chairman of GAP HQ and he is the Professor Emeritus at University of Peradeniya, Department of Civil Engineering, and he is the immediate past president of Institution of Engineers Sri Lanka, and he is the immediate past chairman of Green Building Council of Sri Lanka. So today we are here to talk about the AIS framework, an interesting framework that he has given to Sri Lanka and to the world. So today we are going to talk about what AI is. Sir, what is AIS framework?
Sanju, this AIS framework means A for adaptation, I for the innovation, S for the sustainability. So this is, though I propose it as a framework, this is a framework everybody practice. The day that we born, we adapt certain things from the environment, from the people, and innovate it. Because you cannot adapt it as it is. We have to innovate it according to our capability, our environment, and so forth. Then we have to make sure that we sustain it. It can be a language. So you adapt the language from somebody, then you practice according to your way. You can't pronounce as somebody else is pronouncing. So you have to practice according to that. The very important thing is that you have to sustain it so that you become fluent in the language that you hear. So this framework can be used for your social life, personal life, your academic life, as well as the business environment. So this can be used anywhere. So what I mainly did was, I used this framework in the GAP headquarters to create the businesses. So adapting means that when you adapt something, we use it at a startup. When we see a business somewhere, we adapt it. But you can't practice it as it is. For example, if I adapt some concept from out of the country, definitely you cannot use it because our people are different, culture is different, environment and so forth. So definitely we have to innovate it. But very important that when we do the innovation, we have to make sure what you adapt must be sustained. Therefore, innovation is the most important thing. But no point of how good the innovation is as long as you cannot sustain. Therefore, I believe that the AIS, adaptation, innovation, sustainability, these three elements are very, very important, interconnected. If you do not adapt carefully, you cannot innovate it. If you do not innovate it carefully, you cannot sustain it. Most important is sustainability, but without adaptation and innovation, you can't sustain.
Right.
Hope you understand what I said.
Got it, sir. It indeed is an interesting framework that we all can follow. But I hope that if we can get some insight from you, like as in how you have adapted some of the things which is in the world or the countries that you have visited, how you have adapted and innovate and sustain in your life.
Yeah, my memory go back to nearly 25 years. I can remember when I was studying in Japan, I noticed a nice user-friendly table. I felt it like if I can have a similar one in Sri Lanka, how nice it is. But I mean, the importing the table like that nature is not going to work. Therefore, I took the photograph of the table. Then when I working in the University of Peradeniya, when I get the opportunity, I create the similar table, but look similar, but not exactly the same. What I use is to adapt the concept of the table. And that same table was manufactured in Sri Lanka. Looks different, but the purpose is almost same. Very cheap compared to what we had in Japan. So still, I remember, even if you go today, the computer lab, Department of Civil Engineering, use that table. So it's a classic example of adaptation and innovation sustainability. What I want to bring about 25 years before, I have been using this concept throughout my life. I can bring another example which I noticed about 15 years before. 15 years before, I visited to QU University in Brisbane. There was a conference. There I noticed that for the first time, like, there's a smart board. I just inquired the price. Even at that time, it is close to 1 million. You can't bring it. It's a big one. So, but when I see that one, I remember that how my instructors struggle to teach us before doing the practical. What I remember is that if you have a board like this one, you will be able to use it, maybe PowerPoint presentation, something like that. Of course, we have the facilities in the big lecture rooms, but not at the practical desk. So what I did was, adapting what I found there, I innovate. What I did, I bought a Samsung TV and they make the frame at the workshop. It cost nearly 11,000. I can remember it adapted very well and sustained still. Even today, most of the practical, in front of the most of practical desks, you can see this gadget. Classic example, adaptation, innovate, very low cost, manufactured in Sri Lanka, and sustain.
Right, so as we keep talking about this very interesting framework, which is AIS framework, adapt, innovate, and sustain, why don't we select one part and then we talk about more on that topic, and then it'll be very useful for you, and then you can adapt, innovate, and sustain in your life, in your business, and whatever you do. Sir, shall we start with adapt first, so that people know how we can adapt?
It is a journey. Adaptation, innovation is a journey. So every day or every life, either way you can get it, begin with a new life. Whenever you are born, you start a new life. Whenever you wake up every morning, you start a new life. So every time you see something, maybe somebody crossing the walk, somebody talking in the pond, somebody greeting, how the people meet each other in the morning. So everywhere there is something that you can adapt. So then you cannot use it as it is. Then you have to innovate it. Not only innovate it, but also sustain it. Therefore, coming back to the adaptation, I think this is where you have to be very smart. Where you have to be very mindful. Right? You have to start the day very fresh. Very important that you have a very good sleep. You have to, I recommend you dress well, become very comfortable. You have to be on time. You should not rush to the work. You know, to be with less burdens. Then only when you see the thing, you can adapt it. If you are so rush, if you are with the problem, if you are not sleep, you can adapt it. Therefore, if you want to succeed from the framework AIS, to do the A, you have to be very mindful. You have with a very clear mind. You have to with a very good attitude. You should not carry a hidden agenda. Likewise, I can tell you a list of the good things that you have to follow to become successful in adapting the thing. So without that, you cannot adapt it. So then, you have to understand what you should adapt. There are you think that you should adapt it. Forget it. You adapt to forget. If you see the bad thing, you adapt it and forget it. If you see the good thing, you adapt it and forget it. So for example, I was in a conference yesterday. I was invited to deliver a keynote speech. So I listened for the conference various activities. As you know that I'll be organizing the 5-6 conferences per year. Though it was a very smaller conference, I had something to adapt. For example, each and every session is dedicated to the sponsor. So I adapt it. Okay, in my conference, in our conferences, we should dedicate the different session to the companies. So that is my adaptation. Of course, after that I will innovate it and I will sustain for the forever components that will do it. Coming back to the adaptation, you have to be with a clear mindset and the very mindful in order to adapt the thing.
Right, thank you very much, sir. I think now we have a clear picture of how we can adapt things from the environment. Main thing is that you have to be mindful, and then for you to be mindful, you have to start the day fresh. Whatever you do, start it fresh. So thank you very much, and we'll go next, which is innovation.
In order to innovate something, you have to adapt it correctly. So that means, if you see something, you may have to get the photograph, you have to refer the manufacturer, you have to refer where it come from, the reason behind having it, you have to understand the whole thing. So this is where very important, your education plays a good role. If you are not enough educated, you can't do it. I mean, the education means the education in your area. Of course, you have the general background also. If you are an engineer, you should know about the subject. Therefore, education plays an important role for the innovation. When you want to do something new, for example, you assume that you want to have the high performance concrete. So first of all, you have to adapt. It is, we call it a literature review. So you have to see how the world so far has tackled this problem. Learning from there, then you have to keep the next step. So in order to read, in order to understand, you should have the better education. You must have the mathematics, you must have the science. So you have to understand the language. So there, to innovate, your education is better. Of course, the experience also another important area. But you should have experience of doing things. You can suddenly you can't adapt something and innovate and sustain. That experience matter. Therefore, the education, experience, understand other subjects, that knowledge is very, very important in order to innovate. There you have to consider about the society also. Whatever you innovate, if the society is not accepting, it doesn't matter. If you innovate something, it is very costly, it doesn't matter. If you innovate something, it is not sustainable, it's a matter. Therefore, whatever you innovate, it should be sustainable innovation, green innovation. But knowledge is a matter.
Right, so now everybody starts something. Sometimes they continue as well. But most of us are struggling to keep on doing whatever we do, which is, if we start with an entrepreneur, most of the startups fail at their early stages. So sir, how can we, sustain whatever you have in this framework you call about adapt, innovation and sustain? You specifically mentioned that sustainability is a must. So how can we sustain, sir?
Yeah, I also have to repeat this, no point of adapting, no point of innovating if you are not going to. That is what I see this, most of the research happening in Sri Lanka, linear. You read the literature review, you do some experiment and so forth, you come up with the theory, finding. You write, you publish the paper, and that is it. It's a linear, you start from one point, going to another point. But it should be circular. In order to make it circular, it must be sustained. So, we can think in different angle. For example, it can be language. You adapt language from the books and listening to the TV or somebody talking. But you cannot talk, you cannot use it as it is. You have to innovate according to your education level and the usage and so on. Then whenever you have the opportunity, you have to publish. It can be public speaker. In the public speaking, there are various things that voice variation, eye contact, vocal variety, many things. So you can adapt from somebody, but you can't use it, do it as it is. It will become odd. Therefore, you have to innovate according to you. Then whenever you have the opportunity, you must practice it. The similar way, if you have wanted to start the business, you understand how businesses are happening around the world. A particular product, maybe buying and selling, right? Maybe you buy something and change a little bit and sell it. Right? So then you understand, maybe when you go to the exhibition, you understand, right, this is important for the Sri Lanka. It might be locally or abroad. Produce it. Or otherwise, we can modify this one, innovate. Then you have to find out the correct market and sustain it. Then you have to think about the financial viability, social acceptance, and many, many things are there. Right? This is how you have to sustain it. Therefore, very important to sustain something that you do, and adaptation and innovation equally important.
Indeed, sir. Yes, thank you very much for all the inspiration, sir. I think when we talk about AIs, it all goes together. If we start talking about one part, suddenly everything comes under that too. So that is the nature of AIs, I think. So now we'll move on to another interesting aspect, which is commercialization of this AIS framework. Okay, so now we have learned about how we have used this framework in the university, in the company, and then, sir, we would like to know if we can use this in a product also.
Yes, actually, we can use for the many products. I'll come with the one particular product we recently developed. This request originally come from industry. They said that for the fishermen, they go to the sea like the 3-4 days. They usually carry water for drinking purposes. Other hygiene purposes, they don't carry water. That has become a big issue, mainly socially. They say when they come back from the sea, even the family members won't approach for a 1 or 2 days, that is much smelly. So that means we cannot carry this much of water, it's a huge amount. Therefore, we need to have the water. The RO system is a tested method. But we found that there are companies producing, not locally, foreign companies. So we got the quotation, it cost like the 1.7 million. This is not a affordable Sri Lankan. So anyway, the company brought a sample. They say that do anything and make sure that something doable. But we didn't want to go into the detail because as we know the technology, so we developed concept and we asked a company to manufacture it. We manufactured it, came like a 700,000 or 750,000. So that is almost like the 50% of the cost. Then not only that, we said that if this is successful, if you go for the manufacturing of the 1,000 or something like that, we can reduce the 25%. Of course, then they took the machine to the sea and found the water sample was tested in the water board and various other places, found that the water is a good quality. Now we are in the process of scaling it. So that is the most important one that we can scale because of this one. So that will help to the community. So we adapt the technology, we innovate with the local manufacturer, but we have to buy certain part out of the country. And in order to sustain, the cost is the matter. We could reduce the 50% of the cost, that is the driving force. And also, we understand that there's a huge market. There's 20,000 vessels in Sri Lanka, Maldives at again 16,000 something like that. There's a huge market in between Sri Lanka and India. So that is another one to sustainability. There is a financial feasibility and the market there. So that both will make sure that we can sustain it. Definitely that will be in the market very soon.
Of course. Thank you very much for all the insights, sir. So far we have talked about AI's framework, examples, and how we can adapt this framework to our lives, our businesses and everything. But now we are going to talk about commercialization part. Sir, what is your experience in commercializing this concept in your company, I think?
Okay, I'll jump into directly the GAP headquarters, Colombo 7. So you will see here that some of the companies that we develop. But of course, we have few more companies developed, which is still not there. Let me come up with the one company. This is Lanka AIC Private Limited. So this is where I was invited to Norachole power plant, and they explained that there is a huge issue because of the fly ash collection. But that is become a big environmental headache. The big pollution, and that create a lot of compensation and so forth. They want to get rid of fly ash. Then similarly, I can remember that I have visited to a factory in China. There they use this fly ash to produce the lightweight brick. Therefore, I decided to do the literature review. I mean, that is called adaptation. Then I understand this is doable. Therefore, I get together with two of my students, and we decided to do some research. Then we did the research component initially at the University of Peradeniya, and we found that this brick can be produced even in Sri Lanka. But we got some issues. We again innovate it, and finally we come to the conclusion that we can develop it. So then we decided to invest for that, and we developed the factory called Lanka AIS Private Limited. So there, once we started the factory also, we again found some difficulty, especially getting cracks and all that. Then again we help of the one professor in chemical engineering and one chemist and civil engineer, and a team of the group of the people did research, I mean that is innovation, and finally we could continue the production. So that is the sustainability. So that is the classic example for innovation, adaptation and innovation use that the framework used for the developing the company. If you want more detail about, I can tell you about another company too. When you get the AICB Private Limited, so it is an International Center for the Sustainable Built Environment Private Limited. My research from the day I started my career on the structural health monitoring. Structural health monitoring, what we do, we understand the health of the structure. I mean, it's very much similar to what the doctors are doing. When you go to the doctor examines and say that your condition is, this is the medicine that you want. Similarly, when I visit the structure, I can say how safe, how healthy the structure. So that is what we did, because earlier, without knowing this one, when the structure get old, people assume that there will be a collapse and so forth, therefore they either demolish or they replace with something. So it doesn't matter how old it is, but we can say exactly what is the remaining life of the structure. That is our research. I think for the time being, we have produced nearly 10-15 PhD students, PhD holders. Then we, with the two of my students, I decided to establish the company. That is exactly this company. We established about 2010. During the last 15 years, we have been delivering the consultancy services for the most of the structures in the country, which are all, for example, Mani Museum, Gapur Building, and many other old structures. So many bridges in this country, including the Kalani Bridge. So there are some bridges which they have decided to replace the bridge. But we say don't to replace. Whether it is to be replaced or keep, we decide. When we decide most of the situation, we understand that that can be used. So we reuse. Therefore, this is very sustainable. This is circular economy. This is a recycling, reuse of the material. So that is another classic case. Therefore, when you look into almost all these companies, the basic idea come from the AIS. First, we adapt any concept available, then we innovate it and make sure that they sustain it. Sustaining means not the sales of the product, not the business, financial viability, also important matters. So that is we create it.
Right. All right. So everyone, now we all know what kind of an impact that Professor Ranjith Dissanayake has made to Sri Lanka as a student, as a professor, as an engineer, as an entrepreneur. So, sir, we would like to know, as Sri Lankans, how we can develop this country through this AIS framework, because we all know that you have given the utmost impact to this country to develop our country to a better place. So, for us, for everyone, what is the one last message that you can give?
Okay, let's start some point. You are basically trying to understand the sustainable development, sustainability.
Exactly, sir.
Sustainability come with basically three pillars. One is the environment sustainability, other one is social sustainability, and the economic. These are the three pillars: social, environment, and economic. Among these three, what I feel is economy is the most important one. Second, social. Third, the environment. As I said earlier, these three are equally important again. So it doesn't matter how much it is green, if you do not have the job, you are you are frustrated. Similarly, if how much money you have, how much green, if you know the good social state, still you are frustrated. So therefore, Sri Lanka, very recently we declared the economic downturn. Even I can remember here also people were in the queue 1 or 2 days to get the petrol. So we have to go into the detail. Very simply, for any given second, we spend some money. I'm not talking about what you spend locally, what you spend internationally to buy the petroleum, essentials and so forth. If you spend 100, if you earn 100, there is a balance. But even today, if you spend 100, it can be dollar, it can be pound, whatever it is, any currency, we don't earn that. So that means every day the problem is still remaining. So there, you will see, when you look around, you will see most of the things are not manufactured in Sri Lanka. If you go to the road, many vehicles are not manufactured in Sri Lanka. If you go to your own kitchen, many things has not been. Therefore, we need to have the kind of manufacturing culture. Then we have to at least capture the local market. Then we have to think about improving the quality local market. So this is, there can be different model. I'm getting the one model which is more close to the AIS framework. Therefore, in order to develop Sri Lanka, my conclusion, we have enough innovation around the world. If you want to develop the transport, you go to the Singapore or Malaysia and India even right now, you will see how their train system and other systems are running. Basically you adapt. But you have to innovate it according to our culture and practices and so forth. Very good example. We have a very good rail network, but still people are driving the cars. So we have to adapt and innovate and sustain it. There another one comes, the policy matters. The rulers must have the good policy framework and implement it. Therefore, we don't, of course, doing research is good, but we don't want any new research. There are enough things to adapt to this country. Just innovate and sustain. That itself, within the 5 years, country can bring to a level we accept as a kind of well-developed nation. Therefore, in order to bring the sustainability, the economy matter is very important, and the transport, various other things, adaptation and innovation sustainability model can be used to adapt. We don't have to do anything new. We have the enough similar countries, similar climate and so forth. These things can be adapted and innovate according to our context and sustain it. Thereby, we can have the developed nation.
Right, so thank you very much, sir. I think from our today's topic, which is AIS framework by Professor Ranjith Dissanayake, so if you have listened to this talk, like if you have given the attention to each and every detail, there's something to learn. So that I think that also we can adapt to our lives or maybe business and innovate it and sustain. So that is the main message for you, for us, to develop this country as a nation and by ourselves as well. So thank you very much for joining with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.